answer these 4 questions to start. So we're going to start with the explaining Roe v. Wade. How many of you would like to see Roe v. Wade overturned? Another question. Okay. Roe v. Wade does not give women the right to have an abortion. Roe v. Wade allows women the right to privacy with regard to the due process clause of the 14th Amendment with the sole purpose of, quote, protecting women's health and the potentiality of human life. Roe v. Wade is not woman-centered, but is physician-centered, giving power over to doctors to be able to decide comprehensive health care for their patients. It's important to remember the context in which Roe v. Wade emerges. So in the case Griswold v. Connecticut, which happened in 1965, the court held that a right to privacy was an integral part of the Bill of Rights. As part of Griswold, constitutional protection was given to the right of privacy as it was applied to the possession of birth control. It wasn't until 5 years later, in 1970, that a suit was filed on behalf of Jane Roe, which was a pseudonym for Norman Gordy, who was not able to have an abortion in Texas. The lawyers who took her case said that her constitutional rights were being denied. The Fifth Circuit Federal Court agreed, and the case was appealed to the Supreme Court. In January of 1973, it issued its final 7-2 opinion in favor of Roe against Henry Wade, the DA of Dallas County. Again, the decision was made to protect a constitutional right to privacy, and the court held, this is the important part, that the word person, as it's used in the Due Process Clause and other provisions in the Constitution, does not include the unborn. Persons are understood as the subjects of rights, and this is based on an ontology of personhood, and this includes something social or relational. Fast forward to 1992, in the case Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and the court said, quote, our law affords constitutional protection to personal decisions relating to marriage, procreation, contraception, family relationships, child rearing, and education. These matters involving the most intimate and personal choices a person may make in a lifetime, choices central to personal dignity and autonomy, are central to the liberty protected by the 14th Amendment. At the heart of liberty is the right to define one's own concept of existence, of meaning, of the universe, and the mystery of human life. So, Roe is situated between Griswold v. Connecticut and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, and makes a distinctly conservative argument, one that is taken up routinely by the right with regard to a range of personal liberties, from the right to own assault rifles to freedom of speech. Roe suggests that the most intimate decisions that one can make, including when to have children and who to have them with, ought to be protected from what conservatives might deem in any other context the arrogant designs of a liberal state. Speaking as a conservative, the family, and not the state, is the cornerstone for a good political arrangement. And it surprises me why any fellow conservative would want to give more power to the state to decide family planning. In short, Roe v. Wade is based on 4 principles. The first one, women have a constitutional right to privacy when it comes to reproductive lives. 2, the government must remain neutral regarding whether or not a woman has an abortion. 3, in the period before viability, the government may restrict abortion only in the interest of protecting the woman's health. And 4, after viability, the government can prohibit abortion, but laws must make an exception when the health of the mother is at stake. Roe v. Wade, as part of a broader pro-choice movement, does not want to see more abortions, but wants to give women the unthinkable, the decision-making power or authority to make a choice based on life or death because of her specific relationship to that life and her responsibility to create and care for it. Okay, so on to the second question. When does human life begin in the womb? I stared at that question for a long time. I got the question in advance and I thought about it, and I couldn't help but think that the womb is alive as long as a woman is alive. So life begins in the womb and is always present in the womb, with or without a fertilized embryo. We'll come back to that maybe in the Q&A. We'll come back to that. I think I saw some quizzical expressions. Okay, so the definition, so I looked up the definition of autonomy. So the definition of autonomy is, quote, the right or condition of self-government, especially in a particular sphere, and freedom from external control or influence. So the fetus is certainly not autonomous. I know the video that we just watched suggests that the fetus is in some ways self-sustaining, but the fetus exists inside of the woman. So a woman is not dependent on a fetus, but the other way around. The fetus is dependent upon the life of the woman. I don't know that abortion is itself a moral right, but the right to have an abortion is a moral and principled position when we consider the nature of reproduction. It's my belief as a pro-choicer that the fetus and the woman are one person, and that one person is a woman. I'm not pro-abortion. I feel like I have to say that often in these kinds of situations. I also don't know anybody who is, but I also can't conceive of subordinating a woman's rights to those of the unborn, because a woman is not separate from a fetus any more than a woman is separate from her own womb. No one wants to have an unplanned pregnancy, and because of this, no one wants to have an abortion. Sadly, and too often, women are having abortions because it's the best choice that they have. And this in part represents the failings of the community. And we are all part of that, particularly when we shame women for having sex or fail to teach them about contraception. When women say, it's my body and it's my choice, they're talking about a range of choices, from the ability to decide when to become pregnant and who to have children with. I mean, how many women end up having abortions because they never planned on having sex in the first place? Okay, so in regards to the government question, so question number 4, what role does the government play in women's reproductive lives? I just want to say the government has historically played a huge role in women's reproductive lives. From the dynamics of old religious political power to the eugenics movements of the early 20th century, for millennia, women have not been able to control their own bodies. In fact, in our recent history, Black, Puerto Rican, Mexican, and Native women's bodies have been the battleground for a discussion around reproductive justice, routinely imperiled by forced sterilization, targeted for dangerous nor-planned injections, and subjected to containment strategies connected to white supremacist and eugenics movements. One need only go back to the 1920s and 1930s, where American courts were approving sterilization for Black and brown women as a condition of probation. Or one can look at the real-time sterilization without consent for folks with disabilities. The question I will start with, in addition to the one posed, is what role does religion play in women's reproductive lives? The reason I pose that question is because the pro-life movement is well documented as a religious movement, which is fine and I have no problem with. Religious positions have a place in healthy societies, but I'm concerned about the imposition of religious beliefs about fetal personhood and the subordination of the rights of pregnant women through the law. It's perfectly fine if a church tries to convince a community in a forum like this that a certain choice is a better one. But legislating those choices or shaming women who make really difficult decisions by comparing them to what Hitler did during the Holocaust eviscerates some very important distinctions in Western jurisprudence and constitutionality. Namely, the fetus is not a person, and granting fetal personhood strips women of their constitutionally protected rights. These distinctions in Western jurisprudence are also between the publicly moral and the privately religious. If we start to legislate religious principles, we open the door for the possibility of becoming a victim to somebody else's religious beliefs. This is why our founding fathers emphasized a separation between church and state. Now, I know the strategy of the pro-life movement has been to distance themselves from making a moral argument and to rely instead on reason and science, but this is a moral issue. It is simply immoral to let women suffer and die due to unsafe abortion. It is immoral to subordinate the rights of the living, breathing women to the unborn. I'm going to quote Ayn Rand at length. She says, "The task of raising a child is a tremendous lifelong responsibility, which no one should undertake unwillingly. For conscientious persons, an unwanted pregnancy is a disaster. To oppose its termination is to advocate sacrifice, not for the sake of the human benefit, but for the sake of forbidding happiness and fulfillment to living human beings. The question of abortion involves much more than the termination of pregnancy. It is a question of the entire life of the parents." She goes on to suggest that the pro-life movement does not project a love for embryos, but rather, quote, "a very hatred for an unknown object." And to be quite honest, I've noticed this. It's rare to come across a pro-life person who comes from a place of love and forgiveness. So I have to ask, when you know that women who obtain abortion suffer from depression, why are you interested and invested in activism designed to further shame and stigmatize them? Why are you calling women who have abortions murderers and suggesting that they be locked up? When it comes to specific questions regarding the role the government plays in women's reproductive lives, I'd say that a good government ought to protect the rights of its people by providing access to quality healthcare and quality education. This is not only about a legal framework, which includes the right to choose abortion, but a moral framework, which takes seriously the range of options available for women during their reproductive lives. Questions like, do women and girls have access to quality sex education? And how can we encourage young women and men who are sexually active to use contraception? These political questions lead us to solutions aimed at reducing the numbers of abortions. This is what a good government ought to be focused on, because without an aim towards reducing unintended pregnancies, we get higher rates of abortions. We need more choices and not less.